Everybody, wait a minute.
That great man, V.I. Lenin, at the turn of the century, wrote a book entitled Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. Is it? Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism? Yes. If one would read this little pamphlet, one would see here that Mr. Lenin had precisely pointed out that all of the world had already been conquered and divided by colonial powers. There was no else in the world left to be conquered or divided by colonial powers. This is the time when Zionism comes to rise. Zionism comes to look for a state when everywhere else in the world is already dominated. Thus, in order for Mr. Herzl to get a country for Zionists, what he did was to attach himself to imperialism, British imperialism in this case, quite specifically. Of course, as an African who suffered under the heels of British imperialism, I can have no love for it, and certainly I cannot love anyone who attaches themselves to it and attaches themselves to it for the foundation of a state and then call this a liberation movement. Liberation movements fight against imperialism, not with it. Clearly here. Yes. The legal foundation of the State of Israel is what is known as the Balfour Declaration. This declaration was issued in 1917. A man in the government of Britain named Balfour wrote a paper and promised the Jews a national home. The national home he promised them was an area which Britain was colonizing, Palestine. Palestine didn't belong to the British, just like Ireland doesn't belong to the British, even though they have troops there. But here, these British imperialists signed a note and gave it to the Jews, and they accepted it. Where is the morality for this? If you say that Israel belongs to you, then you don't go to a thief to get Israel, you go and take it. Once you go to an immoral being such as British imperialism, and this is the basis for you getting the land, then clearly here those who are truly liberation fighters must question this. The basis, we say, is the Balfour Declaration, and Zionists know it. The Zionism is certainly not a liberation movement because it never fought against any imperialism. As a matter of fact, today, Zionism is the baby, child, and infant protector of imperialism in the Middle East. It carries out the interests of American imperialism. As a matter of fact, Zionism and American imperialism is like this. If our tax dollars would stop giving money to Israel, the state would sink tomorrow. And certainly no one can deny that American imperialism is the leading imperialist nation in the world. So we cannot see how a liberation movement is so tied, string, and ham to American imperialism. They work hand in hand with American imperialism. Thus, they can hardly be a liberation movement. In addition to this, Zionism has nothing to do with anything religion, nothing. All religions are concerned with human beings after they die. That's what religions are for. Islam will tell you what happens to you when you die. As a matter of fact, this which forces you to live a good life so that after death you'll be able to enjoy the rewards of heaven. The same is true for Judaism. But Zionism says nothing about the individual after they're dead. They don't give a damn about you. The Zionism has nothing to do with religion at all. And one should not make the confusion here. The Palestinian state belongs to the Palestinian people. This is a fact.
Greetings, everybody. Sorry about that unfortunate transition, but welcome everybody to.
I mean, we
yeah. Go ahead.
We should just watch the lecture.
Yeah, we should.
I mean, we should just watch the lecture and then
that's a great way to start your Sunday.
And then the Q&A and then leave.
I agree. And if had we planned on it, I would happily, But out of respect to our special guest,
oh, sorry,
Cloud is in the building. But let me just say,
Peace,
welcome everybody to I guess this will be episode 1 of Real Footballs Around. I don't even know if we agreed on that, But Claudia O'Brien is here. Daniel is here. We expect everybody else to join us. I guess whenever they finish whatever it is they're doing, and of course, happy birthday to KwameTure. Please like, share, subscribe. Put this in your socials. Invite others to join you, and welcome. How are you both doing, Claudia? Good to see you. Right on. Ready for the revolution.
Peace, yeah. Peace.
The autobiography Peniel Joseph
Great book,
ignored
great book.
entirely. You know.
Great book.
That's hilarious.
No, right on. Cloud.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah,
Right on,
I'm
right
good.
on.
I'm back in Lima now. So I was in New York for a moment, and now I'm back in the global south.
Well, I guess, yeah, congratulations. Welcome. Hold on. Mutanda, Robert, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yep.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we don't have, any official plan. We were just, saluting KwameTure briefly for his birthday that is today, and congratulating Claudia making it safely out of I got hung up on some inappropriate, terrible joke about self-deportation, but
well, we'll see what it looks
yeah.
like when I go back.
Right.
Leaving is not the problem. Going back is.
Right. So yeah. But Mutanda, Robert, welcome. I know we only have Claudia for somewhat of a limited period of time, so I know we want to get to at some point the BAP statement on FIFA, and then Claudia says she can hang out for at least some period of time and rap with us. But yeah, other than that, I don't, I have not much of a plan. I did read, Daniel, your article that your keep that same energy, and I do like your writing. I put the links to everything I think I've already got in the show description, including to the BAP statement, other information about the petition to sign, all the links to learn more about my colleagues on screen here, and including this piece from a couple of years ago by Daniel about the politics of World Cups and sports washing and Dr. King's manipulation. I loved all of that. So, all right. So how do you all want to proceed? What do you want to do? What should we do first? How should we go?
I say we start with the guests. So let's read the statement. I think that would be.
Yeah.
All right. I will. Give me a second here and pull up the statement, and we can start there and invite again others to check it out and sign the petition as well. Let's see, this should work here, right?
Yeah, perfect.
FIFA and IOC must ban the United States and Israel from hosting or participating in international sporting events. So yeah, Claudia, what should we know about this? And let me see if I can fix our little setup here while you get us started.
Of course. Yeah. So the North-South Project for People-Centered Human Rights is a project of BAP, right? Black Lions for Peace. Ajama Baraka is the director of the project, and I've been working with him in the past few months, sort of supporting some of the things that we've been doing. For example, we went to Ecuador for the elections and participated in we were invited by Movimiento Afrodescendiente Nacional Ecuatoriano, National Afro-Ecuadorian movement, and so one of the leading organizations in Ecuador, African organizations. And we participated in the elections there, saw really alarming. I've never seen somewhere so militarized for an election, particularly in the poor and working class neighborhoods of Guayaquil. And we went specifically to the places where there was a, large amount of African voters, the majority of them heavily militarized. So all that to say, the project has been doing quite a lot of work in the region, but throughout. And this next, this next work that we're doing is calling on FIFA and the International Olympic Committee to one, move the games from the U.S., because aside from the U.S. Bankrolling and supporting for the past almost 2 years now a live stream genocide, and now also including aggression against Iran. They have, and we've seen this, throughout, particularly in LA, but throughout the country, how ICE agents, and not just ICE agents, but police departments that cooperate with them, and different levels of law enforcement that are cooperating in these kidnappings, essentially. Many people that have had families taken away by ICE or by these law enforcement agencies haven't even been able to locate them through ICE, through the ICE database, or a very dedicated team of lawyers, and they still haven't been able to identify where some of these folks have been taken to, right? And of course, we know that ICE, even though it started in the early 2000s, before that was INS, right? Immigration and Naturalization Services. And in the 90s, and we talk about this pretty often, right? In the 90s, what does Erica say? That 90s are severely understudied. But Bill Clinton, not long after the crime bill, then also pushed for IRERA, which was I forget exactly the what it stands for, but Immigration and Responsibility Act, something like that, where it essentially took any sort of deportable crimes from 3 to like dozens, right? So, and it was backtracked, right? So if you ever had any misdemeanor and that was, all good and taken care of, you still are deportable for a crime. So similar to the skyrocketing of Black and African people in privatized jails, similarly with ICE, well, at that point INS, and then it becomes ICE during the Bush administration, and then Obama really takes it up a notch, and that's how he becomes sort of the deporter in chief, right? Deporting more than 3 million people in just the first term alone. So we see that this is not just one party, right? It's both parties of the duopoly. It's the U.S. imperialist capitalist system that, one, engages in imperialism all throughout the world, right? Coups in the global south. I myself am from Peru, right? And my family moved here after a U.S.-backed coup in the 90s of Alberto Fujimori, right? And my Barrio Saltos, became one of the sites of a massacre, huge massacre, including the killing of an 8-year-old boy who was my neighbor and one of my brother's friends. So this is something that's not, it's not just theory, although sure, but this is something that's very, people are being pushed around all over the world, right? Exploitable labor. We're in a pool of exploitable labor. So the U.S. goes into, engages in imperialism throughout the world, forces this migration. Then once people are here, are become a pool of exploitable labor, which, capitalists need. And then now are being, are vulnerable and are being, hunted down and taken from their communities. We do see that there are people and organizations and coalitions that are forming, that are fighting back against these things. But of course, it's still very much ongoing. So this petition is one, avenue that we can take to really show that, and we also know, right, the beautiful game, right? People from all over the world want to come see the World Cup, but is it really safe for them, right? In this moment of severe, repression and hunting people down, essentially, right? Actually, the Club World Cup right now, I know some friends that haven't been able to go or they're going, but they're bringing their passport and their visa because ICE agents are out in the game there. So yeah, this is a petition to get to FIFA and the IOC. When it was about Russia, we're very much on board with immediately getting them out, right? But when it comes to the U.S. or Israel, mum's the word. So this is one way that we are, hoping to raise the consciousness of folks and being able to make these connections, right? That these things are not separate, phenomena, right? A genocide is happening that is being funded, rubber stamped by the U.S., who internally is also engaging in this war against non-European, non-citizens, right? So, this is, definitely one avenue that we're engaging in to raise these contradictions, and actually, eventually this, becomes what would be a boycott of the U.S. and Israel. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. And fellas, anybody have any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, etc.? And I also wonder, so I watched the travesty last night in the comeback allowing Honduras to beat Panama in penalties in CONCACAF last night in a game played at State Farm Arena in Arizona that looked empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought abnormally empty. And I know myself and our family, because we had considered going up to a game in Philly. I know other of my in-laws and have made similar choices elsewhere in the country to not go at all, just out of not wanting to incur any potential, and then also I've wanted to become more aggressive in saying we shouldn't. If FIFA, if these games are going to be played with the support of the state and in its surveillance and incarceration of folks, then why should we go? We shouldn't go.
Yeah.
So,
and we've seen this before, for example, in Brazil, right, where like literally favelas were cleared out to make way for stadiums that now are empty, right? But people were kicked out of their homes, right? And similar things are happening. I mean, we have comrades in LA and BAP SoCal that are engaged in the coalition No Olympics LA precisely for these reasons, right? Because it's going to be pushing people out, some of the most vulnerable people out of our communities, in order to make way for these games that, they don't actually bring any, any revenue to the actual community, right? That stays within the, I guess, the elites of FIFA, right?
I mean, reading Daniel's story from a couple of years ago, predicting what's happening next year, if I could phrase it that way. And then Daniel, maybe you want to say a word or two about it. That's what the argument was in recounting what happened at the World Cup in South Africa, in Russia, in Brazil. Folks who don't have the benefit of centuries of imperialist conquest and accumulation are then forced to try to play catch up by further abusing their own populations, doing what you're just describing. And now they're going to be doing not having to do that necessarily here. They're going to use it, and Daniel points out one of my pet peeves, using Dr. King as a sort of liberal erasure. But yeah, anyway, that's just my. But anybody, fellas, anybody, thoughts?
I mean, I think the statement kind of speaks for itself. I don't. What was I going to say? Well, in terms of the hosting, I feel like the die is pretty much cast. I mean, FIFA picks who's going to host FIFA Cups years and years in advance.
Yeah.
So I think it was in 2018 that Canada, United States, and Mexico were chosen to be the host for this. So the idea that, FIFA's gonna read a statement and be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go put it in England or some other colonial power, which would be the only other place that like you can have a quick turnaround. I mean, it's not that much better. That being said, the participation peace. I mean, if there was a large enough upcry, perhaps, like, I mean, the piece rightly points out what happened with Russia, how, you know, they were effectively banned from many competitions because of what was deemed an illegal invasion of the Ukraine. So you could probably get some groundswell of support if it was there to make sure Israel wouldn't participate if they qualified, which they probably won't. Whether or not you could drum up enough people to get rid of the United States, I mean, I'd be here for it, but I don't know about that. But like, I think using the World Cup and any international competition to kind of point to what needs to be pointed at, I think is on point. So.
Well, don't you think that it is in some sense we've arrived at a point where the world of sports in some sense is the clearest 21st century version of the Cold War? I mean, this is clearly about capitalism versus socialism, as far as I can see. I mean, certainly the issue with Russia is, you know, an example of exactly the kind of power that particularly the Western nations have over both the IOC and FIFA. And that power over both the IOC and FIFA is exactly the reason why this petition won't have any impact. I mean, this is we're taking a moral stance. What's going on in Israel is part of, you know, the original notion of manifest destiny. And what are we supposed to do, right? I mean, this is kind of the classic case of how the United States works. Yeah. We've got, you know, millions of people in the streets talking about no kings. But the fact of the matter is protests in the context of global capitalism is quite literally the last and only thing you can do to change this system beyond, you know, doing something more radical. Mm-hmm. So
I think, Robert, you know, you can keep all that pessimism in Brazil, my man. Because I feel like this petition is going to be the spark that over the course of the next 360 some odd days in this country, at least, ignites a cry that links itself up to what I was just watching before we got started. What happened in Gladensbury yesterday at the festival? Is that
Glastonbury?
Glastonbury. My apologies.
The
kneecap and salute
Bob Villain.
I like both of these. I was gonna say Bob Villain. Yeah. I've never heard of either of these groups before this morning. Bob Villain that's a dope name.
It is.
Salute to the name in and of itself. And Kneecap isn't a bad name either for an apparent hip hop duo or some kind of, I don't know exactly what let me not say that. They presented in the pictures like they might be a hip hop duo. But they were out there saying, and I'm just reporting, YouTube, Google, NSA, etc. I'm just reporting that the BBC even aired Bob Villain's call for not only from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and free Palestine, but also death. See, I hit mute by accident. Death to the IDF, and that all went out. Yeah. And that all went out on the BBC.
I saw a clip of that yesterday.
Yeah.
But to Jared's point, I think that's right? Like, what is a petition going to do, right? We understand that in order to actually change anything systematically, right, we need power, right? And exactly to Jared's point, this is one way that it could be the spark to raise that consciousness, raise the contradictions of like, well, you did it with Russia, right? And you did it before with Germany and Japan and South Africa, right? And to actually build that power in order to, you know, whether it's, we can actually get a ban and redirecting, right? Maybe it's just Canada and Mexico. I also don't think that will happen. But then the next level becomes a full boycott, right? So this is, strategic, right? Process. All right, this is just one step in that, but exactly to Jared's point is to be the spark to raise that consciousness of our folks.
You know, something that's interesting is, unlike the United Nations, FIFA doesn't have vetoing, at least not in the same way. So, like, if there was an international vote at the United Nations, if you want to sanction Israel or something like that, well, the United States would just place its veto power on the table, and then you could have 180 countries out of the 200 and whatever. They could say yes, but it doesn't matter. FIFA, I think, does work on like a one-to-one basis. So if you did,
there's
drum
no
up enough
security
support,
council in FIFA.
There's no security council. Yeah.
it's
Oh,
one-to-one,
wow.
which is why like the power of the African bloc can get a World Cup in South Africa, or the power of Europe or whatever it could be, could get you whatever. So like if
In
there
the
was enough
whitest
support to be
controlled
like,
country
hey,
in Africa, but yeah.
like we want to ban Israel, perhaps.
Hey,
like
and real quick,
it's not unreasonable.
and because I saw Renee in the chat, please everybody check out Saturdays with Renee from yesterday with Musa Springer and on Black Liberation Media, because in particular because of the perfect juxtaposition between what they were talking about in terms of the whackness of Beyonce and other celebrities in terms of, being used by or used to promote a misleadership class. We see artists elsewhere doing the exact opposite. So I think, in terms of Kneecap and Bob Villain. But it also is a reminder that Mutanda, a lot of folks want to hear from you, bro. A lot of folks are happy to see that you've joined us this morning. So let me stop cutting you off. You get
Good morning, Claudia. Thank you for being here. And it's good to see you. The only thing I was gonna say is there is the court of public opinion matters to some degree in terms of pushing that needle forward. And Claudia, you spoke about, like, of course, the reality of what this petition can do relative to the size of the task may be minimal, but it's all about continuing the movement. What I would add is I do think we're in an interesting place where certain things are being said about the state of the world that may not have been said in the past in the places they are being said. For example, Glastonbury. For example, obviously social media, the very public condemnation of Israel, of the U.S. is in the U.S.'s role in it. And I'll give you this example here in Seattle at a Club World Cup game. The Seattle Sounders supporters group, I think it was against before the game against PSG, and there's a photo that can back this up. Maybe Jared, you could search for it to pull it up. But like, I wasn't at that game, but there's a photo of tons of people holding up Palestinian flag, right, in the Seattle Sounders supporters section before the match against PSG. I'm not sure that would have happened en masse in years prior. There you go. So
that's a lot.
Actually, nor would it have happened in an MLS game.
Right.
I'm not sure about that.
Wait, isn't the Seattle Sounders MLS?
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is not an MLS tournament.
It's not. But that's some. But okay, but they did it. The point is, the people. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that the vast majority of people are on the right side of history here. And to whatever degree, I hope it's starting to grow, but to whatever degree that makes FIFA and all these governing bodies uncomfortable, then that's fantastic. I think that's a good thing. So I applaud you all, Claudia, with that. Obviously, I support that. And that's where I think that does matter, because the conversations we have are also ways in which power is solidified. And I do believe conversations are shifting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Not specifically around Palestine, but the LA Dodgers and their fans have been really pushing for them to say something about these raids and the heavy militarized repression in LA.
I heard the Dodgers did support, relatively speaking, they were supportive of immigrants not being harassed by ICE and allowing them some refuge. Maybe I misread that or heard that, but I heard some sort of.
Yeah, they like put, like we support our fans or whatever. But I
Okay.
also think that I saw something about anyone wearing, they weren't letting people go in with any sort of like fuck ICE or anything or any signs that were, against that. They weren't letting them enter. But for example, if you had like a MAGA hat on, they would let you in. I did not verify this, so it's hearsay. But yeah, I mean, I also think that a lot of these clubs and they're gonna realize that they're losing money if these seats are empty, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, well, capitalists are gonna capital, right? Like they're gonna just want to follow the money, and if it's not financially viable, would they reconsider? And so maybe that's a thing, right? Again, considering the a petition, to FIFA and IOC, like, will they even really listen to it? Maybe not, but they might listen to a boycott.
Yeah,
I mean, if I could link it with the
sorry.
go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna
say
link it. I was gonna link it to the beginning with KwameTure, where like they asked him about Dr. King and nonviolence. He was like, Dr. King made an assumption that nonviolence, if you suffer, that it will change the hearts of the people. But Toure said something to the effect of like, in order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience, and the United States has none. And I can kind of say that with FIFA or with the IOC, like a moral appeal, as Robert was kind of going to, like, it's good to drum up support within the masses of the people, but like for those in power, as Claudia says, like they have to have a conscience, and they don't have one. I mean, Gianni Infantino, he has no conscience. Like he's willing to do anything. So,
but it's really interesting in the you may remember this in the, I think it was like during or before the Qatar World Cup, Infantino, and I'm paraphrasing the quote, but Infantino came out publicly and said something along the lines, and I'm not going to remember it exactly word for word, but he said something along the lines of, I am a worker. This is during the quote unquote worker exploitation that took place in Qatar to build the stadiums. He said, I am a worker. I am LGBTQ.
Today I am gay. Today I am a worker. Yeah.
Today I am black. Today he did the whole thing. He did the whole thing.
He did the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now the reason I'm bringing that up, is because just from a practical standpoint, right?
The man is shameless.
One, I don't think, because of the amount of money that's involved with the World Cup in the United States already, just from sponsorships, there are tens of millions of dollars already flowing, right? Forget about ticket sales and that kind of stuff. But I do think that it is more than feasible to get Israel barred from the World Cup.
Definitely.
I don't think it's feasible to get the United States barred. But I think it's feasible to potentially get Israel barred. Now, whether that's, again, all this is speculation, right? But if you look at, where potential movements from the street could have an impact, there's no question that in the course of a year, theoretically, you could drum up enough support to literally impact the games in 2026. That's very possible. I could be wrong. But I think that's possible.
I agreed. But you know what's funny? It's not even a pivot, but just to make the point about Israel being barred, there's a problem, and the problem is
They suck.
obviously they're. Yeah, I was just gonna say they're prominent. They're prominent because of who they are and that they're still competing, but they're not good enough to actually move the needle to actually be considered to even be at the tournament next year. So it's not that like they're
Right.
not going to be there. And then, but on the other hand,
It's all symbolic.
but
All
Do you
of
know
it's
who was
symbolic.
good enough to perhaps qualify, but then
so
they got shafted? Was
Palestine-
Palestine?
yeah, I was just going to say though that this is what's sneaky about this is Palestinians have been competing. Palestine was competing.
Yep.
And what happened in that last match is an absolute travesty.
Break it down real quick.
Travesty.
Catch
Yeah.
people up.
What happened? Tell us.
So what happened is Palestine was playing, was it Oman?
Yeah.
Who they playing? Yeah.
I think so.
So
The
essentially
Iranian referee, by the way.
Palestine, it's just there are many reasons this was a travesty. Palestine had to win the game in order to make it to the next round of World Cup qualifying, right? Winning this game wasn't going to automatically give them a World Cup spot, but it was going to move them on to the next round. They could not tie the game. They're leading 1-0. And then it's, I think, the 93rd minute. It was like towards the end of the game. And they call a penalty kick against them. And when you review it, you're like, it's not even, doesn't even take a long review. I don't know if VAR even got involved, because this is the other thing, is there is technology in place to fix these kinds of errors. It was an error. It was an absolute joke of a call. It never should have been called, but it was, and they got knocked out.
That's unbelievable.
The man literally trips over his own feet. There's minimal, if any, contact from the defender, and in that case too, the defender's never getting the ball. Like the goalkeeper's getting to the ball. Like just talking purely football, there's no way this is a penalty kick. But this is why Palestine won't be at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Or one of the reasons. Now, and adding to that, in terms of this is what I mean about the power of also the symbols, because FIFA is also it is making them uncomfortable how much the symbols are there, even if they don't want them to be. Another case in point, and this was put in our chat, was there's a player from one of the Club World Cup teams whose entire like social media or profile was scrubbed by the tournament. They didn't use his profile. I forget the brother's name. This was in the chat. Let me put it up real quick.
Wow, that's crazy. By the way, everybody, please check the show description for all the links to everybody's information on the screen. The BAP statement we covered earlier. Please sign the petition condemning FIFA and the IOC's refusal to do what they've done in other instances regarding participation in their events. And please, I certainly don't do a good enough job, but if you check the links in the show description, you'll see the amount of actual expertise on screen here is I think pretty impressive, given, the way we sort of serendipitously impromptu kind of fell together to create this little collaboration. So you can find Daniel and Mutanda's podcast. You can find Robert's book and his own effort to save the sport here in the United States. We should come back and talk about that, and even maybe debate that. Should yet another black man be falling on the sword to save the United States again? Again, Robert?
We should definitely
Was
revisit
Crispus
that
Attucks
issue.
not enough, Robert?
You know what I'm saying? We gave already. Yeah. Mutanda, did you find the name?
Yeah. Hussein.
Cloud doesn't know that story, so we should bring her up to speed.
Apologies if I don't get his name right. But
we can come back to go ahead.
Hussein El Shahat, but it's a player from Al Ahly. So originally what happened was he removed. I'm reading from a social media post, but they removed the promotional images of the player after noticing that he was wearing a Free Palestine bracelet. In his, you know, how the players all do these, you know, the poses that they use to promote the tournament and their teams, etc. And then there's a player who scored. I think some people are aware of this, maybe, who scored goals and they just basically like didn't acknowledge it. So case in point, or the point is, FIFA knows that where the public is on this, and they don't. But what does it say? So this is where I think the power goes. It comes back to what we were talking about earlier with Claudia and the statement and all this. If this entity is going to do what it's going to do, what does it say though about the fact that they're still going out of their way intentionally to remove any semblance of symbolism related to Palestine? It means that it bothers them. It means that it irks them. It means that they know that if we let this go at all, it's going to be crazy. Can you imagine if any of the stadiums, or if they allowed it, right? You can picture these meetings. They're like, we can't have these stadiums turn into for example, like the Irish stadiums are.
Yeah.
When they got all those flags and they're
Lizzie's
chanting,
in
like,
a box. Lizzie's in
Yeah,
a box.
the Celtic games are no joke.
Celtic games, they don't want that.
Celtic too. That's right.
That's in Scotland, by the way.
So, to some degree, that's power in the people, right? It's not enough. We know it's not enough. Unfortunately, it's not stopping the bombs on Gaza, but it's something that we can continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm often conflicted over what practical things can be done. You know, what are we supposed to be doing over here?
Yeah.
And in terms of overt discussions on YouTube, I mean, what more is there? You know, what more can we advocate? Sign some petitions, you know, throw on some wristbands, say we support such and such, you know, and encourage that vibe to continue. Speaking of which, I did pull this up. If I can just quickly show a little bit of what we were talking about earlier. This is from Bob Villain's Glastonbury. Wow. Yeah, because that's what it might look like at World Cup and Club World Cup games if they're not careful.
I mean, listen, I'm happy to be corrected here, but like I'm not sure of another time when it's been like that in the public sphere to that degree, like with this issue. I mean,
I'm not aware. I don't think we've ever seen sort of a public shift like this. And I am, you know, where my pessimism always comes in these moments is what happens to that energy? How is it dissipated?
For sure.
And in this country, it often ends up in, you know, just another vote for a Democratic Party, you know, corporatist. So that's why, you know, even where, Robert, on some level, it's not that I disagree with some of your fundamental concerns, but this is ultimately why I do, you know, support what Claudia is here to represent and encourage, because again, in terms of overt public conversations,
no, I agree with you, Jared. I mean, I'm totally, you know, in sync and vibing with the idea. I don't want to, you know, come across as being pessimistic. I do think that a year is a long time, and in theory, a lot can be done in a year. The fact that we had, you know, by way of example, you know, we had a huge outpouring of support, quote unquote, post George Floyd, right? We had now recently, a couple of weeks ago, this No Kings protest. The question is whether or not something can be structured in anticipation of World Cup 2026 that has staying power to at least last for that month. in terms of its impact. And I guess that's the
Well, I
question.
know of at least one small effort of among a small Black journalist collective, I believe that will emanate out of Baltimore, that whose goal it is to at least use the World Cup being here in the U.S. next year as a way to call on. I believe their effort is to start with calling on the Black press to start using the presence of World Cup games in cities across the country to raise contradictions about how Black people are treated in those communities. So I'll definitely tap back in with them and see how that's evolving in terms of the year, that we have out. But I think at minimum it would be, I don't know. I would think it'd be cool if the stadiums were empty and there were more people outside protesting than inside watching the games. I think that'd be pretty cool. And to the extent that folks, to the extent that that's something I would want to encourage, particularly among those who are more on the ground organizing and in spaces doing that work. Like, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we
I was
should
just gonna
encourage,
say-
family and friends not to go. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Clay.
No. I was just going to say, to your point, how you sustain this is through organization, right? These aren't just like, there's always going to be, sort of organic eruptions of protests and stuff, but how that work is sustained is through organization, right? So joining revolutionary organizations that are able to push some of this work forward, right? With ideological clarity. And then even just seeing, I think, and it's a good thing because she's a BAT member, right? But it also depends on what the set of objectives are. What exactly is it that, the work you're trying to do is pushing forward, right? And then being able to build with other folks, right? So I mentioned before that the BAP SoCal is involved in the Olympics LA, right? Which is a coalition of organizations based in LA and the surrounding areas that are working around raising the contradictions of what bringing the Olympics would do, right? This is to me, it's not happenstance that this heavy repression and militarization is happening a year out, or when is it 2 years out from when the World Cup is supposed to be, Olympics is supposed to be, and then next year the World Cup, right? Like we've seen this play out before in places where there's going to be these big, massive international sporting events, right? That they need to clear out the land first, right? Which means pushing people out, which means heavily repressing any sort of resistance to that, right? So I say that, all that to say that in order to actually move this forward, you need organization, right? And you need to build a coalition with other organizations that you can bring into the fold, right? And push the objectives that y'all have forward in a strategic manner. So at the end of the day, it's organization. That's what's going to actually, push this thing forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting you're saying that, Claude, because here in Brazil, the preparation leading up to World Cup 2014 and then the Olympics in 2016 was mind-boggling in the context of what organization could not do. I mean, there was very little. I mean, Brazil is obviously a radically different set of circumstances than the United States. But in terms of grassroots organizing, there was quite literally nothing that could be done to stop the machine from doing what it wanted to do, and obviously you've got, a radically different set of circumstances politically and socioeconomically in Brazil than the United States. I think it's a lot easier to organize in the United States than it is here. But, that said, I think one of the things that distracts us are these, for lack of a better way to say it, these floating notions of the nation state, Because the fact of the matter is that we have elites in each of these nation state enclosures that are incredibly connected.
Mhm.
And so we often get distracted about, talking about Israel or talking about the United States or Brazil or whatever country it is that we're talking about, because the fact of the matter is those nation state labels are distracting from the real power relations that are at, the top of the organizational pyramid. The nation state is really just an enclosure mechanism to thwart organizing from the bottom. And so that becomes a challenge as well, right? Because the nation state of the United States, even though we think of it as something concrete and quite material, is not. The nation state is ephemeral. It is a floating, non-substantive, non-material reality. It's just an idea. And the material forces of those individuals at the top that drive the nation state concept are basically there regardless. So I think that's a challenge. There's a conceptualization challenge of how we organize, because there's a mythology surrounding the whole concept of the nation state that I think thwarts organization and undermines the ability to mobilize.
Absolutely. Claudia, tomorrow there's a press conference. Did I hear that correctly? That's going along with the distribution of this?
There will be a press release.
Press release. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is a conference, but yeah, a press release will be going out, and all the socials. I think we already have a graphic on our Instagram, but all the socials will include more of a rollout, right? So we soft launched on Friday within our membership, right? This is sort of part of being on here is part of that to get the word out, and then this week is going to be specifically tomorrow more of the formal launch, and then we'll be working on getting the petition out in multiple other languages as well, so that it's readily accessible to anyone.
It's already in Spanish, I see on the page,
yeah.
so that's cool. Yeah.
You need a Portuguese version too, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Let me ask you a question, Claude. I'm not sure how much time you have, but one thing I do want to plug with respect to the sport is that the quote unquote league that I'm interested in launching in the United States is a league that has as one of its primary objectives education and consciousness raising exactly about these kinds of subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And the clubs that I'm quote unquote projecting into the marketplace as I speak to you are clubs that are at least theoretically platforms for local organization for exactly this kind of mobilization. So I want to make that clear. And I'd like to, open up a dialogue with you and BAP just along those lines. And for the audience, just to get an idea of where we are in this process, because it's very early on in the process, you can go to urbanrefugee.myshopify.com to follow what we're doing.
It's in the show description, the link that Robert's describing. Yeah, does BAP have a sports
Not yet.
what is committee, sporting committee?
Not yet.
A anti-sports washing committee? Yeah.
Is Klau's contact information also in the show notes or no?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, maybe you can.
I can.
Afterwards.
Yeah, I'll connect afterwards.
Okay.
Everybody.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, and exactly the kind of initiatives that are needed to make these interventions, right, and to save the beautiful game from capitalism and imperialism.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up, here in Lima, and then moved to New Jersey. But my grandfather, I'm sure other generations too, like, we're hardcore Universitario fans. So, like, I grew up in this, Peru never makes it to the fucking World Cup, and if we do, it's Guerrera that's getting cocaine tested.
Oh, damn.
because we drink coca tea, and apparently that's a thing that you can't do.
Claudia,
That
you know,
does suck. And
you
you
know
do have
this-
to fly. You have some fly uniforms too. That sucks that they're not. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So,
do you know this this Peruvian sports writer and podcaster and influencer named Echevarria?
No.
No?
But I clearly need to look into it.
I don't know where he's coming from politically, but he just launched a book. He wrote a book about Maradona, which he's now, hawking all over the place on social media. I'll try to get his name to you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, he's on he used to be on ESPN. He was like a fairly big name. Yeah, I don't know where he is now in terms of, what he's doing, because I think he might have left ESPN, but he's a big name in the firmament of sportscasters and influencers in the United States.
Yeah, no, I would love to read up, and then because I mean, also a lot of politically Peruvians that are in the spotlight tend to be very reactionary, certainly not revolutionary. So I'm curious about this Maradona book, because there's so much revolutionary history, right? I mean, like, considered Fidel his second father. Right?
No, exactly. He's got
Yeah.
He's got Che tattooed on his arm.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just wondering, I don't know where he's coming from politically, that's like a part of Maradona that you cannot exclude in a biography.
Exactly.
Right? That's essential Maradona,
Well, we started off by referencing a very popular scholar here in the United States who claims to have written the definitive book on KwameTure without referencing the man's own autobiography. So it can be done. Don't underestimate. I mean, that I still can't get over how egregious that is. Like, not one word of reference to that man's autobiography. Like, it's absurd. But yeah, so watch out.
It's nasty work to call it Stokely a life. That's just nasty.
Stokely a life.
That title
crazy work.
alone is just
crazy work.
What in the
counterinsurgency is what that is.
That is
exactly.
Unbelievable.
Exactly. But I'm telling you, he's the basis for all these Malcolm X Netflix series and documentaries. Like, this guy, I'm telling you, these folks, it's scandalous.
Right. But let me ask you a quick question, Jared, because I don't know whether you or anybody here on the online today has seen. Now, this is like over a year ago. I saw I think it was a 5 or 6 part series on the life and death of Malcolm X on Netflix. It was largely focused on the quote unquote cover up of his assassination. I thought, for a Netflix documentary, I thought that was decent.
It was so Robert, I won't waste too much of our time this morning, but I have literally hours and hours and hours of content
I would love to see it,
condemning that documentary, including.
Is that the one where there's like this one dude following the case and who did what, and it's like a whodunit kind of thing?
Yeah, it is kind of a whodunit.
It's a whodunit where the reveal has been known for 20 years. So he revealed nothing. Then he was selected by the people making the documentary, who themselves don't know anything about Malcolm. This is the same dude that praised recently the black father holding up his son at a Trump speech, saying that his son had overcome some disability to become a police officer or some secret something like that. And this dude who made this documentary is connecting this to statements Malcolm X made about or that he bastardized about the value of the police or something. I mean, this dude is a complete. But I was just going to leave it in the words of Baba Zak Kondo, who was in that documentary, and he said he regrets this. He openly admitted, did Baba Kondo, to his credit, that he was mistaken in allowing himself to be in that documentary. It's an atrocious mess, but I've already taken up too much time. Yeah, it's super frustrating. But that's my point. And then people, and then people like Robert end up talking about it was decent.
Well, let me tell you from my perspective, okay?
It's not your fault, Robert.
I'm in Brazil. I've been here for damn near 30 years, right? So, and I've always assumed that Malcolm X's assassination was orchestrated by the police and the FBI, right? In a sense, the conclusion of the movie simply confirmed that. And I think for most Americans who are terribly ignorant, I mean, the United States is the only country in the world where ignorance is a profession. I think that message got across fairly clearly that there was some shenanigans going on in terms of not just the assassination, but the cover-up. So, you know,
but it was ultimately a brother from Newark who did it all, and I've discovered and I've revealed the big reveal. But look, we don't have time. Listen. Before Claudia, I want to give you. I know you got to run. I'm going to give you your final word. But this was just shared a few hours ago, or within the last 22 hours, from the Shabazz Center. Okay. What is this? Okay, so this is, they are now selling, to commemorate Malcolm's 100th birthday this year, they're now selling refurbished versions of this T-shirt that Spike Lee had initially put out with the movie.
Oh, at the end.
Atrocious trash film.
The American flag in the X is, again,
the American
crazy
flag.
Wild.
And now you can get it from the Shabazz Center and help fund community programming, educational exhibits, and cultural preservation in Harlem. This limited edition Malcolm 100th birthday tee, designed by the official Spike Lee in collaboration with Michelle and this, I'm not sure, that is more than apparel. It's a legacy. This is
amazing.
Oh my God.
Oh, keep reading though. Keep reading. Oh,
okay. Hold on. All right, I got to keep reading. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Hold on.
Third graph. Because where the picture is taken is.
Oh, right. Thank
too
you.
much.
The original design was worn by Spike Lee on the set of his 1992 film Malcolm X, shot in Soweto, South Africa, a moment that connected Black liberation struggles across continents and generations. Now it's reissued in honor of Malcolm's centennial. This tee lets you wear the movement while giving back to the mission.
That's some heavy stuff.
That's some heavy stuff. And again, as Candy Andrews reminds us, in the film, at the end, when you see Nelson Mandela reading Malcolm X's speech, you do not see Mandela saying, "by any means necessary." They cut to Malcolm saying that, and you're meant to see that as an honorific to Malcolm, but in reality, it's because Nelson Mandela said, "I will not say that on camera." So it's a liberal washing on top of a liberal washing, and now yet another generation of a liberal washing of
Fast forward
Malcolm.
to 2010, when the South African government decided that they needed to clear the streets of those people that would live in Soweto. So,
for the World Cup.
For the World Cup.
Perfect. Circle back to where Claudia had us begin, and unfortunately for you, at least, you got a wrap for today. But go ahead, Claude.
No, just thank you so much for having me on and talking about this petition. Again, people-centered human rights project of Black Alliance for Peace is launching this petition formally tomorrow for the FIFA and IOC to ban the United States and Israel from international sporting events. The petition, it's going to be a while of just getting, ideally this is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of signatures. But beyond just getting signatures is building the momentum and being able to build on the ground to carry this work forward. So yeah, I just really appreciate, the work y'all doing, and give me a few minutes to talk about this.
No, anytime. Thank you, and shout out to BAP, of course. And the link is in the show description, so folks, please sign it and spread it around. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Anytime
y'all.
you want to come back, come on back,
peace.
Cloud. It's
I was
good to
going to
see
say
you.
we should get Cloud back at some point.
Whenever, anytime.
Yeah.
Permanent invitation. I'll let you know next time we organize, get ourselves together.
Copa Libertadores. I could do a little something about that.
All right. Perfect.
Bet.
There it
All right.
is.
Peace,
All right.
y'all.
See you. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Peace, y'all.
All right, everybody. Like I said, please check the show description for the petition. Big salute to Claudia and to BAP, of course, as well. Thank you very much. And Obi, good to see you relatively, you know what I'm saying? Virtually in a chat, whatever. All right, fellas. So where what's next? Where you want to go next?
Club World Cup.
Club World Cup. What's
I wanted to ask Robert
PSG,
how
PSG and Maradona going at it right now.
I wanted to ask Robert how the Brazilian, how in his being on the ground, so to speak, how has the Brazilian performance been received by the people? And you're a Flamengo fan, correct? So
I'm not just a fan. I'm like a member of the club.
A member of the club. Yes.
I paid my monthly dues. Yeah, man, the reaction down here is, I don't want to characterize it in some kind of first world versus third world thing, but that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, people here are kind of, excited about the fact that they were able to, challenge the notion that European hegemony in the sport in terms of, the money involved can be challenged by teams and players in Brazil who are right now, for the most part, there are exceptions, obviously. For the most part, Flamengo's players are all Brazilian based, right? Some of them have been to Europe and come back. But,
Jorginho, for example?
Huh?
Like Jorginho?
Gerson.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Gerson's probably the best example. So, that's, I think, on the whole, the press has been very supportive of the idea that, this country, which is on the quote unquote on the periphery of football, is still, somewhat of a power. I mean, there was a statistic that came out in the press down here that the number of players on the other 31 teams, the highest number of foreign players on the other 31 teams, Brazil is number one. I think Argentina was number two, but I'm not sure of the ranking. Yeah, I can't remember the ranking, but so in other words, the quote unquote settler colonialism has been juxtaposed and put in the press, and people are talking about it. It's all over the place. I mean, every day. I mean, Brazil has got every channel has got sports commentators, and they are all talking about the juxtaposition of Brazil versus the rest of the world. So it's being covered very closely. A lot of Botafogo people here in Rio were disappointed with yesterday's result, where they lost to Palmeiras.
They deserve nothing.
No, Botafogo didn't play well. But that's when you support your club, you support your club. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, it would be very easy to imagine, Palmeiras and Flamengo not making it beyond this round. But certainly there is hope that they can get beyond this round. So we'll see what happens. But it's a big
Chelsea,
deal.
So they have a chance. Palmeiras, anyway.
Yeah, Palmeiras. I think Palmeiras has a chance against Chelsea for sure. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. and Bayern Munich and Flamengo is tomorrow. So
That's
It
today.
said
I
it's
believe.
today at 4:00 Eastern time.
oh, that's right, today. That's right. Right
So none
after
of the Argentinian sides made it. River and Boca were both eliminated.
River
correct?
Boca, they both went home.
Interesting.
And
Because
all
I
of
was
the
I was
all of the
thinking last
teams-
week because it was looking good for them, like in the initial game or two, and then I guess by game 3 that they didn't get the requisite number of points. But I was thinking like in the normal World Cup that's with countries or nations, it's normally the 4, 5, 6 best European teams. And then does Brazil or Argentina have a squad that can win this thing? Like that's generally how it goes. Like Africa's not
Yeah, I
really a
think you're right.
factor. Asia isn't really a factor. So and North America certainly isn't a factor. So it's Europe. And does Argentina or Brazil have a squad? So that the club game has kind of gone that way, where like the best European teams and at the time Argentina, but certainly Brazilian clubs have shown themselves well. It's more or less confirming that those are the two poles of where football.
Yeah, but
the main.
I totally agree with you in terms of the polls, but I also want to emphasize, as I normally do, that the clubs from Europe that are quote unquote in the tournament and going the distance in theory are populated by Africa and Latin America.
But
so-
but I would make the point that so are the national teams. If you look at France's national team, it's not populated by Gauls. It's populated by
absolutely.
Moroccans,
Absolutely.
Algerians, Congolese, Senegal,
Yeah.
Cameroon. So like it's a similar dynamic. It's
Yeah,
not the
I think
same,
that's right.
obviously.
Absolutely.
But like
Now the colonialism thing is.
if you look at England,
at
it's
work.
Nigerians and Jamaicans, and so
It's absolutely at
And-
work
and
and
cul-
alive. The tragedy in Brazil, in some sense, which is just hard to describe. I mean, all of us have quote unquote educations. The thing that's shocking about Brazil are the numbers of Black people playing the sport and the dearth of Black people coaching and in managerial positions in the sport in Brazil, because there are basically none. They don't make it to management positions. They're just players. And that's, of course, a reflection about the nature of how capitalism works in Brazil. Because we don't have any kind of a network of quote unquote historically Black colleges and universities. And so the impact on society since the slaves were freed in 1888 is it's just amazing. It's kind of hard to believe that how far a majority Black population country has been excluded from any kind of notions of wealth creation or anything along those lines. It's amazing.
tap in with Tanta. You've been quiet for like too long.
No, I'm just listening. I'm just chilling, man.
We're not here to listen. We're here to give these hot takes, bro. These-
Oh man. I bet. I don't know what to add. What
What have you made of the Club World Cup so far? You even went to games. You might be the only one here that's actually attended a game. So, in terms of
Yeah,
the
but
organization,
I'm
like, how did you feel it in the stadium?
Okay, so there's football stuff we can talk about. Then there's, in terms of like the actual organization and like what's happening on the pitch. I think so. Robert's point is interesting. All these tournaments, sometimes there's like a Rorschach test for what people want to see in terms of like where football's at. Sometimes I feel like, because you can pull lots of different things from it. I don't disagree with what y'all are saying in terms of the polls necessarily, although I would say what's interesting. So Robert, you said something that I kind of wanted to ask you about or clap back on a little bit, but I think you clarified it, so then I let it go. But you mentioned like Brazil being on the periphery of the sport. I think is that how you phrased it earlier. And I think I know what you're getting at. You just in terms of the money involved, right, and the exploitation of the players.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think we can all agree that Brazil's not like who. I certainly don't think of Brazil on the periphery because they supply. They're the leading supplier of players, right, of throughout the world. So, my main takeaway from this Club World Cup is thinking about the ways in which, and this dovetails off of just the guests that we had, Claudia, right? The ways in which we're all implicated somewhat in the systems in this world, for better or for worse. Because of course, there are a couple tickets I didn't pay for, and there's one ticket I did pay for to go to the Club World Cup. So, right. So like, I'm not blameless, in terms of supporting or going to fund these imperial projects. So I feel a certain type of way on that. That's my own little reflection. And then when it comes to the actual games themselves, I've said this, right? And this kind of my whole stance with football, whenever we talk about football in this show, has always been this, right? The games prove this to me, or they solidify this to me. The level of talent and the nature of this game is a lot closer and it's a lot more nuanced than a lot of people like to think. Case in point, when I say Botafogo didn't deserve anything, not just against Palmeiras, I don't think they were good. I saw the Seattle Sounders outplay them for much of the game that they played against them, and they probably should have won the game. I'm not saying Botafogo is not a good team or not a good club, not a historic club, and doesn't have good players, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that the MLS is on the level of the Brazilian league. Not saying that. What I am saying is, though, that the conversations that sometimes are had when people talk about even the sport here in this country, or certain people who play the sport, or et cetera, whatever conversations people want to have, the hot takes, right? When you watch it in application and you see the level that people are at, and you see, I saw a team from Japan, so I saw Uruguay, I saw Argentina, I saw River play, I saw River twice actually, and I saw the Sounders, I saw Botafogo, and I saw Inter. These players are so good. Like, where the game is at is crazy. Like, globally, like the game is at a place where everybody has players. Now, the level of money and the resources that different clubs have, yes, it's a huge. It makes for a lot of differences, but also what makes for differences is also where the different contexts that people play under. So part of the reason people are saying Brazil, or part of the conversation that people sometimes don't have, not an excuse, but would be interesting to see sort of where they're at. Not all these players are in the same point in their season. So when we talk about the results, sometimes people want to make points about the results without understanding the context. Brazil's in the middle of their season. Obviously, they're taking a break for the teams that are here. A lot of these European teams are at the end. I'm only saying that because when we look at the results and we look at performances, I know full and good well, just from a player standpoint, a labor standpoint, a lot of these European teams would rather be on vacation. They don't want to be playing in this tournament. But the fact that they're taking it seriously has to do a lot more with the amount of money that's invested in this. And if they win this, it's a lot, right? It's a lot. So we know that their ownership and their response, they're not going to let them sit this out. But it's kind of crazy what the players are being, I say forced, but what they're being put through here. So that's an interesting part of this.
Can I add two things? So firstly, the first thing, and I know I'm choppy, so I can't really talk about technology, but we need to get you one of these, like a pop filter. Second thing.
Yeah. You can't
wow.
hear
me? Wow.
Can you not hear me, bro?
Jared, we hear you
No, we hear you great. But Jared, don't tell me you weren't thinking the same thing. Because I feel like we're kindred spirits in terms of the
it's not that I don't think it. It's that you're saying that from a position, because I have the same issue on mine actually, but you are saying that from such a position of inferiority in this moment. Like, hey, that's why I'm saying wow.
But but I sound clear. I must sound clear. Like the choppiness of the screen is the fault of the software, but I must sound good at least.
All right, fair enough.
Wait a minute. For somebody who is not in the podcasting world, at least yet, explain what you're saying, Daniel.
that there
pop
well,
filter.
if we go just like how speech is said, there are things called plosives. So like when you say P's or B's or things, like there's a power of air, so to speak, that hits the sensor inside of the microphone. So if you don't have a pop filter, it like
Exactly how it
rattles the sensor. But anyway,
So what Mutanda was saying was rattling the sensor.
yeah. Like in my ears, I was hearing,
Oh,
you
wow.
know,
Okay.
plosives.
Maybe the
But that's
problem
just
is your
that's
headphones, Daniel.
that's
Maybe the
that's
problem. Maybe the
that's just my editor brain.
Maybe the problem is your headphones.
Maybe
Did you hear that?
maybe it's
No,
me.
go ahead.
Anyway,
Go ahead. What was
second
your
point. No, does anyone ever say that when the Club World Cup was held in the middle of the European season and the end of the Brazilian season when it was in December or January? So they
Say what?
that, oh my goodness, that these Brazilian teams are so tired, and that's the reason why European clubs have won all the rest of these Club World Cups, is because they're
Very,
in the middle
very
of
good, Daniel. Dan, you get 5 stars for that one, Daniel.
Well, but hold on, y'all are doing too much. I'm not saying that I'm not excusing any of the results or saying that this is why someone's doing better.
I'm not
What
saying you
is
said that. I'm asking a question based off your point, but I've never heard anyone say that, man, when the Club World Cup comes normally, and I
Yeah.
think the only other time that a European team lost was when Flamengo or Fluminense beat
It was
Chelsea
a
in like
long time ago,
2013 or
2011,
something like that. But
2012, 2013. Yeah, it was a long
yeah,
time
but
ago.
nobody ever says, hey, this is in the middle of the European window where these players are more
people
or
say
less
it.
at their
I'm
optimal
including-
point. And these
Yeah.
Brazilian teams, players play more games in the course of their seasons than Europeans do. Flamengo's probably going to end up playing 70, 80 games.
Yep.
So
every year.
Mhm.
it's an
Every year.
No, it's a great point, and this is what I'm saying though about that is that this is the thing, is that you have people then use these tournaments and the results to make a commentary based on whatever they think is going on in the game. So if, to your point, Daniel, if when the people don't say that about the Europeans winning because the European team probably wins, right? And those tournaments in the past, this is the first time this format has been like this, right? It's usually, I mean, the European teams that go and win the Club World Cup usually play 2 games. They play a semifinal and then a final, right? That's it. They're already like, and then other teams have to play a couple different other. So, I just think it's.
all I'm
When
saying is
you
that
watch
like that tiredness excuse or point is rarely ever given to teams in the inverse situation, and I don't think that's fair.
No, but I didn't say. But again, you're doing. I didn't say that they were.
I'm
tired.
not
I
attacking
just
you,
stated a fact.
Mutanda. I'm
No.
merely adding or extending the point. It's not an ad hominem. I'm not saying you've said anything. It's merely an extension on your point.
No, but the only.
So
but
don't
this is the
feel
thing
away.
is, I'm not feeling away. What I'm telling
Okay.
you is this, though. It can go. That's what I mean, because you're still adding a part that I didn't say. I'm not exclusively talking about.
That's the whole point of a conversation. If I just said what you said, then we'd just be, mirroring each other.
Yeah. No, fair enough. But the point
No,
is,
no,
this,
no.
what
Fair
I'm
enough.
saying
Fair enough. So, like, see, that's stupid if I just copy you. But go ahead.
I'm saying, if you want to take it, and I was really going off of what Robert was saying, because I don't think the Brazil's on the periphery of this sport, and I don't think a lot of people who watch football and who are in the know and who are intelligent people believe that. Right? And I think that, and actually, part of what I'm saying this is the social media aspect of this tournament is really interesting, because it's leading people to make conclusions that just aren't like, what are we talking about? So for example,
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
No. Go finish your thought process.
Well, so for example, the 2 Argentinian teams that didn't play well, right? What do we make about that? Right? Versus the Brazilian teams that seemingly have played well, even though a couple
I think there's an explanation behind the performance of all these clubs from Latin America.
Okay.
One, Argentina, for the past, let's say, 25 years, 30 years, from a macroeconomic standpoint, has been on precarious ground. And they're still on precarious ground. And as a result, thinking about this in the context of, base and superstructure, however you want to describe it, the culture industry in Argentina has not been strong. And football, of course, is a leading product of Argentina. They have had to export as much talent out of Argentina as possible just to keep clubs in Argentina above water or break even. Argentina's population, I think, is like 40 million, something along those lines. Brazil has been, in contrast, because it's a much larger country. The state of Sao Paulo is larger in population than the entire country of Argentina. The economy of Sao Paulo alone is larger than the economy of Argentina, but it is still a third world country. Brazil's still a third world country. So I'm going to take issue with the issue of the fact that you're saying that Brazil is not on the periphery. Brazil is by far and away the most important country on the periphery, but European football is overwhelmingly dominant in terms of their importation of human resources from Africa and Latin America. They overwhelmingly dominate that game of buying talent out of the third world. The amount of money that they generate in Europe for this sport, at least in the context of the top 5 leagues of Europe, is roughly the equivalent of what the NFL generates in the United States. And the NFL by far and away is the biggest generator of revenue in the United States for pro sports. So I think that it's safe to say that from an economic standpoint and from, the standpoint of disproportionate power, Europe is without question the center of the world for this sport. And in that sense, every country outside of Europe is on the periphery. Now, Brazil, no question, continues to produce a lot of talent. Certainly by far and away the most talent that gets exportable. But I think, even in the context of what Brazil's doing, I think that the reason that Brazil has been able to survive to the point that it's survived in the tournament so far is that you have certain clubs like Palmeiras, you have certain clubs like Flamengo who have post 2014 World Cup, who have the infrastructure and they have the training and youth academy structure in place so that, quote unquote, the best talent in Brazil is now being funneled to 4 or 5, maybe 6 clubs in the country that are basically, using these people to maintain themselves at, at a decent level of performance. Like, I think I mentioned the last year, financially speaking, Flamengo generated about $1.5 billion reais in local currency. Now, in an exchange rate context, the exchange rate is basically 5 to 1. So that means that Flamengo generated somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million. Still, that 1.5 billion local currency that Flamengo generated last year is more than the entire Argentinian league generated last year in revenue. So, now obviously, if you look at the prize money for the Copa Libertadores versus, the Champions League in Europe, it's an absolute joke. I mean, it's embarrassing, how little money is involved in the Copa Libertadores compared to Europe. So I do think I have to take issue with the fact that you think Brazil is not on the periphery. I think Brazil is clearly on the periphery. It's just the biggest of the peripherals.
No, you make a good. I appreciate the I appreciate your points, and I'm making more of a comment on terms of the actual, like when it comes to the football aspect on the ground, when it comes to the like we have conversations. I don't disagree with anything you said there in terms of the basically essentially the impact of capitalism, colonialism, all of that, and the center of the game being there. What I'm talking about is, so for example, what I would come back with is I'm speaking to the fact that while all that is true, and all of what you said about Argentina and the state of their clubs is true, Argentina are the world champions. And we talk about sometimes Brazil, right? And we've had this conversation here. Brazil losing the people have the conversations about Brazil not playing well because a lot of their players leave Brazil and go elsewhere, and they're doing it earlier and earlier and earlier, which is true. And yet I'm saying that, like, when it comes to the ball rolling on the field, it's really interesting still how do we reconcile all of that with what you just said, and with the fact that if that's the state of Argentinian football and their players also leave, they're world champions. Brazil is probably, what would you say, Robert, in the worst place as a national team that they've been, at least for many a year, right? Like I know Ancelotti's just got there, but they've been really struggling. So how do we reconcile all that?
So I think that's a good point, and I'll give you a quick and dirty overview of how I reconcile it. And I know it's kind of hard to avoid the racial issue as well. So there is if you've been to Argentina, I don't know if you've been, but it is definitely worth a visit. Mm-hmm. It's in Buenos Aires from a classic bourgeois perspective, is a city in Latin America that's hard to believe, physically speaking. It's, quote unquote, in many respects, a first world city. There was a lot of wealth there 100 years ago, and it's reflected in the infrastructure that's there. But it is also the quote unquote, from a psychological perspective, the whitest country in Latin America, mentality-wise, right? It's no coincidence that there are no blacks on the Argentinian national team, because the genocide that took place in Argentina against the black population, which is something no one talks about, is reflected in exactly that. I should also say that in Argentina, many people do not consider Maradona white. So that's another kettle of fish. But having said that, one of the challenges I think Brazil is going through is that, aside from the exporting of massive amounts of talent at a very young age, is a quote unquote a psychological factor that people often call, and I'm translating this into English,
mongrel complex.
Yeah, mongrel complex. The quote unquote the mixed race concept, the idea that somehow Brazilians are inferior for whatever kinds of reasons. It's always juxtaposed in the context of whiteness and people who are of color or mixed or black. And one of the things that happened when Ancelotti got contracted this time was whether or not he was going to be capable of, bringing that mentality in line, so to speak. What could he do to overcome that, right? And obviously, we will see how that pans out. I should also mention that he has not, and it's very publicly discussed, he has not chosen Neymar to be on the team for a number of reasons. One, because Neymar is out of shape. But I think there's another reason that he hasn't been.
That's probably a good reason.
Right? There's another reason that he hasn't.
He's being blamed for Lamine Yamal having an OnlyFans girlfriend now, too. I saw that reported.
Yeah.
That Neymar is hanging out with Lamine Yamal. Yeah. And Lamine now got himself an OF girlfriend. And they're saying that's the Neymar effect.
Well, the other thing that's going on that nobody talks about is that Neymar, at least until last week, is a supporter of Bolsonaro.
I feel like we've talked
And
about this. I feel like we've talked
and nobody, no, at least in the press, nobody is linking that to why he hasn't been chosen for the World Cup team. But Neymar's narcissism, combined with his lack of being in shape, is also a factor for why I think he has been chosen. So having said all that, Brazil's up shit creek. I have no idea whether they're going to do anything in the World Cup. If the Copa America is any sign, I think that they will not do well. But you never know. Maybe Ancelotti maybe he can perform a miracle. They certainly have the talent to win it, but the question is whether he can mold that talent in a way that.
So when I heard he was
allows him to
having
do
a
it.
positive effect on the team and they were playing better, that was wrong.
I just think it's too early to say. It's too early to say. He hasn't been there long enough to make a real difference.
I think he's coached like 3 or 4 games, maybe.
So I think his track record. He's probably, of all the people that are out there that Brazil could have hired, because he's the first non-Brazilian coach in the national team's history. Of all the people that are out there, he's probably the best one to have been hired, just based on his track record, because he's basically coached, I think, in every league in Europe except the UK. I don't think he's coached in the UK.
He coached Chelsea.
Yeah,
he won.
coached
He won
Chelsea.
the double with
Oh,
Chelsea.
so he won so then he's won in every league
major European league.
He's run every major European league, every
and
one
5
of the big 5.
Champions Leagues.
So
Yeah.
Brazilians are cool with this decision to not hire a Brazilian coach?
I think that the majority of the fans are cool.
Uh-oh. Robert got Daniel's internet.
Yep.
Let me be frank. I only have this problem here. So I think it's whatever my computer doesn't get with Restream. And I only brought up the sound because me and Mutanda have the same mic. So I know the problems and the issues with it. So that's the only reason I brought that one
Somebody
up.
called you 240p in the chat.
I know, but we have.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? 240 feet. What does that mean?
Bad.
That he's
bad
broadcasting at low quality.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We have elephant skin. Tough exterior.
240p.
Let it go.
Jesus Christ.
Well, Robert or Jared and Daniel, what are your thoughts on Club World Cup? You guys, Daniel, you brought
I
it
like
up.
it.
What
I
did
like
you
it.
wanna, yeah,
I like
did you
the
wanna get
idea.
into?
Let me not say I like it. I like the idea. The concept is good. The implementation and the execution has been FIFA-esque, which means bad. But like the idea of different countries coming together and playing, it's like the idea of a World Cup is nice. Ideally, in its most idyllic sense, our culture history against your culture history and how that filters through the sport of football. Like it's the same within Olympics. Like I like that. But in terms of where the games are being played, the time the games are being played, the heat, the organization, ticket prices, all of the kind of managerial things that a good idea would need to be executed successfully, I think has been, if I gave it a grade, like a D+. Part of that is just being in the United States in June during a heat wave. And part of that is just FIFA not really understanding what fans need or want. But in terms of just the raw idea, I've enjoyed the games. But how do I put it? I'm empathetic towards the players having to play in these conditions, even to the extent that I enjoy watching them.
And then to clarify, I think that was my point about. I think it's all the players, right? I'm not making an excuse about the European team's performance because I really don't care, frankly. I'd love to see a non-European team go as far as possible, as long as they're good. But in my opinion, Botafogo was not good, and there are a couple other teams who have not been good. But it's just it's wild that players are doing this, and then in a couple weeks, they're gonna go again. I do think that's a problem. I will also say the individual walkout pisses me off. I hate it.
Oh,
so
I hate
much.
it. I don't like that.
It's
That's
so
trash.
stupid. It's
I don't
so
like
stupid.
it.
When I didn't know they were doing that until I got to when I saw the game. When I was
Wait,
like,
what are
takes
they
too
doing?
much-
I haven't seen this.
It's like
they
an
don't-
NBA.
They don't come
Yeah,
out
they
as
It's like
a,
an NBA finals. They
Oh, really?
If I can relate this to
announce
something that
each
Jared
individual.
might
It's
understand, like, do you
ridiculous.
remember in the 90s when like Michael Jordan was being introduced and they like 6'6"
and they would
of
do
the
the
University of North Carolina,
right,
Michael
right.
Jordan.
They start
Like,
doing
they're
the
doing that
music
for
and all that.
11
The lights
people.
go out
but
Yeah,
it's
they're
not
doing
even
that for,
actually
like,
for
like
22
that.
people.
No, but it's
Exactly.
22 people, but it's not even like that because dudes aren't running out to like their own to like a cool song or nothing. They're literally just walking.
Walking out.
They're not running because you can't. There's no point in running because it's just
Right.
like they're just. It's
a very
dumb.
Americanized thing.
Oh,
And
it's
it's even
awful.
strange because in the NFL, I don't think don't they run out as teams in the NFL? Do you know what? I've never been to an NFL
like a
game.
hybrid.
One side, like they'll have the offense run out
Yeah,
or the
it's like a
defense run
hybrid.
out. They give one.
I've never been to an NFL
Iconic
game in my life.
disagrees.
No. Sorry, but this is you can disagree. It's trash. It's horrible. Objectively. No, it's not. No, listen.
You have the right to be wrong.
You have the
He said objectively, it's trash.
It is objectively trash because there's the thing. The thing about this sport is it's a collective sport, and even I always thought that the introductions of the teams was such a symbolic thing, right? You can go back. I mean, at every World Cup, right? The teams are lined up and they walk out together, and they're taking that away. It's just dumb. Why
are they doing national anthems? Are they?
And I like when the kids come out with them too.
They're not doing national anthems, which is fine by me. That's cool.
good.
Like that's fine, but they're not.
Are they playing the
really,
American
thank
national
you.
anthem?
They are not.
I hope not.
They're not. We
I
didn't
hope
know.
not.
They're not.
That's
They're not.
cool.
They're not. Yeah, they're not.
I've got to make one comment about this event in the United States, which is as follows, which kind of goes back to this whole issue of, European hegemony in the sport. And I don't know whether you guys have been picking this up because this is a reality that we deal with, particularly when football starts in August. In Europe, we start spending all our time watching the EPL and the Bundesliga, et cetera, et cetera. This issue of futebol arte versus futebol força. And the issue that I'm raising, which is something I've been beating the dead horse.
I can't wait for this.
I'm going to beat the dead horse. I'm going to beat the dead horse. Okay.
Let's do
Here's
it.
the situation. I continue to believe that we have got to change the rules of FIFA. And of course, when I say FIFA, I mean IFAB, which is the rules body that consists of, the UK and quote unquote the, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. I mean, of this last colonial vestige of rules making for this sport.
Why'd you say Wales
right?
like that?
We've got to implement team and personal fouls because it is absolutely absurd what is happening to the talent. This is part of futebol força, and it is done away with what Brazil used to represent. Brazil and Argentina in particular, but Brazil more than anybody else, has adapted to this rules regime, which basically tolerates all kinds of fouls and leaves it up to one idiot referee running around a football field. There's only one referee on the field, really. The linesmen for offsides are absurd. The football referee misses countless fouls or lets go countless fouls. You see people rolling on the ground for basically nothing.
So Robert wants more refs on the field, calling more fouls.
I want at least two, if not three. But
two more people running around the pitch, but calling penalties.
No. Now you're exaggerating. Now you're exaggerating. Nobody's talking about penalties.
Fouls. I'm saying fouls.
I'm talking about
fouls.
The fouls are being called anyway. The fouls have been called anyway. It stops play. When there's a foul, play is stopped.
I want to get rid of the referee. ideally.
Right.
If only
So,
because
but
where
you
the
want-
referee is, a player cannot be.
You need team fouls and you need personal fouls in order to stop this theater of people falling on the ground all the time when they get touched.
That's
You
not
know,
going to stop.
nothing's
with
happened.
More refs.
90% of these people who are on the ground writhing in pain. It's like a fucking, everybody's out there challenging for an Oscar. It's a fucking, it's ridiculous. Nobody is worse at this, quite frankly,
Wow, I
than
just missed the
Neymar.
third goal.
I mean, Neymar is one of the worst.
What's the
at
score? 3-0.
3-0 PSG.
Woo! Let's go.
And this is why I like the Club World Cup, because it's proving definitively and objectively that Messi is overrated because he cannot beat the PSG.
What are these ideas? Why does it always end here with like Watanda and I just
Messi
like,
is
what are y'all talking
900
about?
years old. Messi's 900 years old. I mean, come on.
But if he's the GOAT, he should be able to will his team past his former team that is now better without him.
Oh, stop it.
I don't know. I don't know about that, Jared. I'm not sure where you're coming from on that one.
I'm not gonna. Let's not dignify that.
I'm just playing. I'm not even serious about that.
No, okay, but seriously though.
But seriously, Robert wants two more refs on the field, calling more penalties.
Well, at least, let's put it this way: you've got to have team fouls and personal fouls to open the game back up and move the game away from football force, which is what Europe stands for, which is basically less skills. Let's face it. Europeans, they have less skills than people from Africa and South America. Let's face it. Okay, that's the reality. That is the reality. Europeans have less skills than people from Africa and South America. It is a fact. Now, if you take the Africans,
when you mean Europeans, you mean white people? Or do you mean like people who play for European nations? Like, can we?
No,
be
I
specific?
mean, I think we have to boil it down to that, lamentably, to that racial issue.
Okay, I'm cool with that, but like,
I mean,
Mbappe he's nominally European.
Well,
really, he's African, but
I'm still going back to the issue of European colonization of the world.
Yeah,
and you can't let go of that history. Okay, the reason Europe is where it is today is because they have imported talent from Africa and Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last remnants or the last stages of that colonial empire.
But wait, finish that. So you're saying not only did they steal the talent, but then they changed the rules to make it so the talent coming from the regions from which that talent comes cannot compete anymore with the colonizer. Go ahead, Robert. I'm with you. Up to the two refs on the field.
So
two more refs on the field.
Let's add more cops.
Wow.
Let's add more police.
Let's put it this way. They didn't
That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Daniel, you already got yourself in trouble.
What I'm saying is that the fouls that are taking place are fouls that ordinarily should not happen. You're having people grab people by the arm, grab them by the shirt. All that shit that's taking place is intolerable. It's unacceptable, and it basically reduces.
I thought the rules were changed to protect the players, so that what happened. Go ahead, Mutana. Go ahead.
The rules have the last major rule change was in 1970 when they instituted the yellow card, and they instituted the yellow card from pressure from Latin America because they hacked Pelé out of the '66 World Cup. So they instituted the yellow card in 1970. That's the last major change that FIFA has imposed on the game. That's 50 years ago.
Mutanda, whites are not as skilled as the rest of the world.
Yeah, I don't even know where.
I know. Ask the NFL. That's why we have 75% of the players in the NBA are black. 75% of the players in the NFL are black. You think that's a coincidence?
It's so crazy.
Okay,
it's not a coincidence. But
connect to this. This main line. It's so crazy.
Yeah, you're so much. So
it's actually a skill. I don't know, like
Johan Cruyff,
especially the NFL. I mean, come on.
Johan Cruyff, George Best, Dennis Bergkamp,
Oh, listen, I'm not denying there's
Well,
talent. There's Larry Bird. Larry Bird is Larry Bird's
no,
Larry Bird. I mean, you know,
you're not.
Yeah, Jared. Yeah, Jared.
you can find out. You can find exceptions.
You were agreeing,
You know,
Jared,
come
and
on.
he brought up Larry Bird. So that's
Come on.
your bet.
I'm not denying that there's talent out there. There is talent across the board. But I'm talking about the numbers in Wakanda. How do you explain the numbers? How do you explain, for instance, NFL football? NFL football, there was a time when black players could not play in the NFL. You know that, right?
I don't want to get it.
And then it's important. It's important.
Metamanzano, Robert, let Mutanda speak for a second.
You're just there's the problem. This is what I'm glad we got to this point, because this was what I was anticipating with some of the things that we posted in the chat and that you and Jared about Cristiano and different things like that. But also, when I talk about the Club World Cup being, people can take wherever the lens they are with the game. This is beautiful. You've been on this football arch versus football fortune thing for a while, and then the conclusion you come to is wild to me, because one, there's video evidence. We don't have to talk in theory. We can go back to what games used to look like and the kind of fouls that people were making. And I don't know how you can have watched football at a time when, like, for example, the fouls that Maradona suffered, right? So you talk about the fouls that Pele suffered. Fair enough. Maradona after him was getting, like, the game was barbaric in some places.
Absolutely.
I would think that all four of us would be able to agree that, like, so the way the game is refereed now, I'm not saying it's perfect, but there are fouls explicitly that they've outlawed, and there are things that players aren't doing anymore. And if they do, they get sent off. Like VAR, like red card, you're out. You can't tackle people the way people used to tackle. So your argument is funny to me when it's like, you like, I don't know exactly what you want. Like, what do you want people to not be able to touch people? No, hold on. Because hold on, you talked for a long time. Hold on. When you bring up something like people grabbing and like the game's a contact sport, like what do you want? Like, I don't understand how you, and then the whole statement you make about Africans being more talented than Europeans is just wild. It's just, I didn't
just say Africans. I said Africans and South Americans.
Yeah, but you know, but I disagree with you. I disagree with you. No, but real talk. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I think and this is what I think is beautiful. When you watch the international competitions like we're watching now, you can't make any blatant statements such as like, oh, people from this part of the world are just inherently better at this and that's it. No, there's talent all over the world. And I think this is my own personal subjective opinion, so you can take it for what it is. I think that part of the reason Brazil's in an interesting place with their football is, and everything you talk about with the capitalism and the imperial, it's all there. The politics, all there. Also, Brazil's in a place where the rest of the world has caught up, and they caught up a long time ago. So the type of football Brazilians used to play and not get away with, but dominate with, doesn't work anymore. And now Brazil has to find a place to reinvent itself, right? So the Joga Bonito, and everybody has flair. We have all these players who can dribble past everybody. Guess what? Everybody's got those players to some degree. And if they don't, the level of organization that they bring to those games in order to nullify what a Brazilian player is going to do is now at a point where it's like, Brazil, you're going to have to be better. So the game's moved on from the type of again, that's where I go back to my question to you, last question to you, and then I'll shut up. My last question to you is I'll shut up. And you have to explain to me how it is that we've got to a place where the top talents in the world are being protected. They're not being kicked out of the game like Maradona and Pele and that generation was being kicked out. That's not happening. So how do you reconcile that with what you're asking for, which is seemingly want more policing of contact? Like how's that work?
Look, I mean, let me try to break it down for you in the following way. Okay. The rule regime right now that is in place is a European rule regime. And from my perspective, it is a colonial rule regime. It is a rule regime that guarantees European hegemony in the sport. Point. That's my point.
But break it down. Help
I'm with
you. But like, okay,
let me break it down.
Help me understand. I'm not disagreeing, but I don't get it. Yeah.
Let me break it down. Okay, the adjustments that quote unquote Brazil needs to make, Brazil has attempted to make. And we're kind of going back to the issue that Mutanda brought up earlier, which is how is it the Argentinian national team won the last World Cup and Brazil hasn't won one in a quarter of a century? You know, all of this has been done despite the rules that exist. All of this has been done based on the rules that are emitted by IFAB and FIFA. Okay. What I'm saying to you is that those rules are there to guarantee European hegemony. My whole point.
What are those rules, though, Robert?
Yeah, which
Help
rules? Which
like
rules?
what rules, though? Like break that down. That's what I'm saying. Like help.
No, the rules that exist today. I mean, the only real rule that exists today in the sport are the yellow cards and the red cards. All fouls other than yellow cards and red cards simply occur with play stopping, the ball being reset, and the player that committed a foul and the player that suffered the foul just simply go on about their business and play the sport. What I'm saying is that basically denigrates and undermines the most talented players on the field. Okay,
but Robert,
let me complete the thought. Okay, and this is my opinion. Obviously, one of the people that has the most ball skills today, regardless of the critique that you make of him, is Neymar. Neymar, in my opinion, even today in his enfeebled state, has the broadest and deepest skill set of anybody playing the sport today. But Neymar spends a disproportionate amount of the time that he has the ball on the ground because he gets knocked to the ground all the time, all the time. Okay. What I'm saying is those fouls that are committed against Neymar should be punished. They should be punished both personally by the person that commits the foul on the other team, and they should be punished against the team that commits the foul, just like the NBA has fouls.
So you're saying that but just this is what I need. So just to clarify. So what you're saying, Robert, is the colonial white trickery that would, on the one hand, 50 years ago, accept the yellow card on behalf of the calls from the Latin American community to defend its players, would then institute the yellow and red cards in 1970 and then turn around and not use them 50 years hence to defend those very same players. In other words,
that's not what I'm hearing.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Rob.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is,
Robert, you said that the only rule is the yellow card and the red card, but when it comes to Neymar, they don't pull the yellow card to protect the player.
Okay,
no.
Yeah,
that's why he's right.
Wait,
but let me get clear, because you're saying that's part of the European colonial rules regime that has been used to stifle Brazilian and non-European play.
Can I get a chance to that's what Jared heard. So now can I say what I'm hearing is that the yellow and the red cards are Europe's way of policing the contact that happens within the context of a football match. And that's the only real form of policing that's existed in the last 50 years. But they only
instituted that on behest of the calls coming from Latin America to defend Latin American players.
Why they did it and why they keep it, I think, is irrelevant.
Well, I'm saying, I'm asking.
Robert's
Robert said that, though. Robert said that. I'm trying to clarify.
What I'm hearing Robert say is that there needs to be a new paradigm beyond the yellow and red cards. That in common fouls that happen within the context of a game that aren't red card or yellow card worthy, there is no team or personal punishment on those tic-tac fouls that stop football being played. And in Robert's
if the player is legitimately knocked to the ground, it's not a tic-tac foul, and it should be penalized, and if necessary, yellow carded.
But see, you make the point there. If someone's knocked to the ground, in your words, it's not a tic-tac foul. But within the regulations of the game, if it doesn't reach yellow card, the referee says it's a tic-tac foul. So Robert is saying we need something in the intermediate before it gets there. And then hopefully if there was a personal foul limit, and even if you did foul somebody, but it didn't reach to be a yellow card, you would still then have this that's your fourth personal foul.
I still think I'm right.
And then maybe that would make defenders
but the reason we don't have
midfielders
that,
less
the
likely
reason
to
we don't
foul footballers.
But Daniel, the reason Robert is saying we don't have that is because these rules have been instituted to defend European dominance. So that's why I was trying to lay out that I did hear it in fact correctly, that the yellow card system was there initially was a false European colonial trick to placate the calls coming from Latin America to defend its players. And then
I feel like you've added traditional something. Like the placate and the trick.
I'm calling.
I feel like that's editorialization.
It may be my editorializing, but Robert is in fact, I think, saying that, and that's why I keep trying to get Robert to clarify. Because Robert said the only reason there's a yellow card, which is the only rule change since 1970, is because it was a call from Latin America to defend players, Pelé in particular. Now, Neymar, another Brazilian, that Robert is saying is the most talented in the world, is in part always on the ground because these cards are not pulled, players are not punished. So I'm saying the trick was, we'll give you the yellow cards that you say you want, and then we're just not going to use them because in the end, our goal is to protect the European dominance of the play.
That's what I heard. NBA,
that's what I heard.
So Jared, just quickly, imagine in the NBA if they only had flagrant 1 and flagrant 2, and they didn't have the personal foul. How physical the game would be if Charles Oakley could just foul anybody at any time.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with Robert's point about adding flagrants and culminating fouls and fouling out. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm only trying to clarify.
And maybe I'm not being clear.
How am I missing
you? No, I'm saying it might be me. So in my mind, if I'm making it analogous to basketball, the flagrant 1 would be like a yellow card and the flagrant 2 would be a red card, right? But basketball has a personal foul system to where you understand that there's contact that affects players who play the game that doesn't reach the level of grave harm, right? And that regulates how defenders can guard offensive players. But in football, there is none of that. There's only the yellow card and the red card. So whether or not it's implemented correctly,
that's not
own
even true,
question. But there isn't. I mean, there's no recompense for personal fouls or common fouls except the free kick.
I fully understand.
But the player can just keep doing it.
I fully understand. I fully get the point.
I just don't agree with Robert's assertion that we need more refs. Like, put 3 refs on the pitch. I don't like that.
I don't know.
Okay.
I want to find out. Here's the thing. When did football? When was there a time when football was not a contact sport? Go back. When should I? What game, Robert? So if you had to, the game, give me a game or a time period with a game that I could go back and watch where you think, yes, this is the football I want to see. What would you?
Let me describe it in the following way. Okay. And I have to go back to Brazilian football before 1982. Okay. Absolutely. So the question is, why is Neymar? Why is Neymar or any player selling fouls? Because when these guys get hit,
because they've always sold.
Hold on.
I'm answering the question because they've always sold fouls. But go ahead.
The question is, why do they have to sell fouls?
Because they're trying to get the.
No, we have to go back to Daniel's.
Which also happens in basketball and football.
Yes,
American football, by the way. LeBron, who people keep wanting to tell me is better than Jordan, is the king of the phony foul, fall on the floor, and whine.
Don't get sidetracked now, Jared.
We're missing the point. Okay, the point is exactly what Daniel said. Okay, football is the only sport that tolerates, quote unquote, minor fouls, if we can call them that are not red card and yellow card worthy. They tolerate, because there's no punishment to the player that commits the foul, and there's no punishment to the team that commits the foul.
Can I stop you right there to make a quick point?
But let me make my point.
Except the free kick.
Let me make my point, because you asked me when was the sport quote unquote the way it should be, when it was better. Okay. And my answer to that is as follows. It was better before 1982.
Okay.
At least in Brazil.
Okay.
Okay. Because Brazil had, up until 1982, the deepest and broadest talent pool for the sport in the world. Definitively. So what I saw in Maracanã up until 1982 is irreplicable. You can't replicate that anywhere, much less in Europe. The closest Europe has come has been instantaneous. It's been, for instance, Barcelona has had a couple of teams like that, or.
So you're saying world football can't be good unless the Brazilians are the best?
No, I'm not. God, Jared. Jared is simply being provocative. Have you noticed?
A little bit, but it does sound like you're saying.
You don't hear your argument.
No, but here's the argument. The argument is to go back to what Daniel said. There is a difference between the athletes in the 70s and 80s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. There's a difference between the caliber of athlete up until 82 versus the caliber of athlete since 82. The caliber of the average athlete, the average football player, is better today than it was 30 or 40 years ago.
I'd have said that.
But however, the rules have not changed. The rules have not changed. The athletes have gotten better. They're in much better shape. They run 2 or 3 times more in a game today than they did 30 or 40 years ago.
So, but Robert, when a player,
so my point, just hold on. My point: if we brought in a regime of fouls like what Daniel mentioned, which is an NBA-like,
right? I get
regime,
it. You don't have to repeat. I get it.
That would free them. That would move the game back.
Okay,
towards
that's a claim.
Arch.
Now, this is the question I've been wanting to ask. You keep repeating yourself, so I can't ask the question. I still haven't been finished my last point, which you all missed.
Go ahead.
And I was absolutely right. But Robert, wouldn't it be fair to say, or could you argue, or could someone argue that the fact that a foul is called and a red or a yellow card is not pulled, it doesn't mean that the player is getting away with it. The ref is in fact calculating and saying the next time you do that, you're not getting away with it.
That's bullshit.
I don't think that's bullshit. I don't think it's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
That happens.
You're telling me the second or third foul that these guys make, they're going to get a yellow card? That's bullshit. They don't get yellow cards. I feel
like I see it a lot.
It's very rare that they get yellow cards.
Actually, I don't know about that.
They foul all the time. Multiple times, multiple quote unquote minor infractions happen all the time. You pull a shirt, you grab an arm. There's all kinds of fouls that are not punished. And it happens all the time and continuously. And they don't get yellow cards. Yellow cards are quote unquote for egregious occurrences where you could potentially hurt somebody.
If I may, because there was a point I wanted to stop you and I want to go back to it. But my issue with your whole stance is you have a subjective preference for something. It's very clear.
We all do.
And then we all do. But you're doing something extra, which is you're taking that, you're adding the very real aspect of the politics and the imperialism of it. And you're conflating a lot of these, and then you're making you're trying to make something, coupling all that together and trying to make an objective statement about the state of the game, which is just like wild. Because that's why I asked you specifically, when should we go back to a specific period where the game was, in your mind, the best? And you bring up 1982 in Brazil. And that's why
1982 is the cutoff point.
Okay.
Before Brazil began exporting talent.
Okay. So but then here's the point, though, is like the point I wanted to stop you at when you said this sport is the only sport that like ticky-tack fouls are allowed to happen, right? Something that I said, right? Verbatim, you said that, right? Like you're allowed to
ticky-tack, but go ahead.
Well, what word would you like to use? I'll use your word. What word? Little fouls that are not yellow card worthy, like
non-yellow card fouls.
Okay, are allowed to happen.
And how many of them are there per game?
But now,
Okay, wait a second. So I just did a couple. This is not scientific, but a couple quick Google searches, and in one instance, I see here the claim here as of a month ago that the Premier League has seen an average of 5.1 yellow cards per game, the highest in history. What do you think is the reason for that? And then on another page, and I admit this is just the Google AI. It's saying that a global study analyzing 100,000 matches across 87 leagues found that the referees issued 4.42 yellow cards per match. So that's what I'm like. I don't know. That's what I said. I feel like I see cards coming out all the time, and warnings come after those first ticky-tack fouls. The ref is like dop 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 dop, and then the next time that player is like boom.
Jared, you know what? I'm surprised at you, bro.
You're
blowing my mind, Jared. Jared's blowing my mind because if anybody,
because he put
would be in favor, if anybody would be in favor of getting the sport back toward art, toward beauty, it would be Jared.
I'm not, Robert.
You're making a subjective claim. You're making that's
but you. But Robert.
It's all subjective.
First of all, Robert,
you're basically taking the colonial perspective, and I'm taking the anti-colonial perspective.
Wait, Robert. I'm also taking an anti-colonial perspective. I'm just doing it differently.
You're ignoring who creates the rules.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm asking you how. I'm not even clear based on your own argument how you're arranging your claim. I'm not denying European. What I'm asking, if you want to tell me Europeans are setting it up so Europeans are better, I am definitely biased in favor of that argument. What I am also biased in favor of is a quality argument and some methodology. So if I ask the next follow-up, if I want to lift the hood on the claim, I gotta see. So I'm just not clear what you're saying because you're.
Well, look, here's what I'm saying to make it very simple. We need to implement a team and personal foul regime of rules that make basically an NBA regime of personal and team fouls for this sport. That's
I don't have a problem
argument.
With that. Fine. I don't have a problem with that.
That's my argument. And with that regime, we will move the sport back in the direction of football art as opposed to football power.
Now that claim, I don't know if
it decolonizes the sport. That's my whole
I hope
argument.
you're right. I would love to see it, and I support in advocating that. But I don't
think.
Okay, I do. But I don't know that it's going to bring it back to what you think it is.
No,
because your point about the amount of yellow cards being pulled, it seems to me there are a lot of cards being pulled per match around the world. So I don't know that what you're asking for is going to lead to the conclusion. But all right, go ahead, Matanda. My bad. Go ahead.
But the simple part of this too, and this is why the conflation with other sports. I know we're not saying everybody here understands football is not basketball, but this is again when I ask the question of like, well, send me tapes or send me back to a time. What game should I watch? This is what I mean by it's a person. You're making a subjective claim that has a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of holes. Football is supposed to flow. If we implemented what you're asking, so just goes based off what you're saying, I want these fouls to be punished. The game would stop. It wouldn't have the flow. The game is designed to go.
You're wrong. You're wrong. You were categorically wrong. The game stops anyway. Every time there's a foul, the game stops. The game stops. The only thing that doesn't
you're just saying make a notation,
and the foul is not awarded to the team or the person that created the foul. That's all. The game already stopped. It's already stopped. The game is already stopped because of the foul. It already happens. The game has stopped. All I'm saying is there's no punishment, and there should be punishment.
There's punishment.
There is no punishment. The game stops. The only punishment is the game stops. That's the only punishment.
No, Robert.
There's a free kick.
Not every time.
This is the problem with hold on. My problem with what you're arguing, there's no way to placate you here. You've gone so far out, like you're not going to be.
All I'm saying is you need team and personal fouls. There's nothing to placate.
Robert, they exist. I'm telling you, they exist. You just don't like it. Exactly. You don't like it.
Where does it exist, Mutanda?
if someone commits persistent infringement, there's something. This is you. I told you it exists, and you don't like it.
Talk about subjective. That's subjective.
That's not
but I just don't think if the goal is to decolonize the sport, I don't think this is going to do it. That's really my point. I'm even different from Mutanda on this in that I'm willing to accept the personal foul and the accumulating fouls. I'm at least willing to see that. I would like to see that as an experiment. What would it do? What would it do to the game? I'm not mad at that because I don't think it would slow the game down. I agree with Robert on that point. I don't think it would slow the game down. But I don't think it decolonizes the sport. I don't think it automatically changes the balance of power, so to speak, back to the Latin America and the continent of Africa. That's all I'm saying. So now how to do that exactly, I don't know. But
let me speak to the issue of decolonization, because the whole purpose of what I'm doing with the football league concept is to counterbalance European hegemony by focusing on the United States first, because I think if the United States creates a world-class football league, which it does not have today, if it creates a world-class football league in the United States, there is every reason to believe that we could create a North-South American axis that counterbalances European hegemony. That's the whole purpose of what I'm doing, is to counterbalance European hegemony. Now, whether that's going to decolonize the sport, difficult to say, because obviously.
Well, I thought that was the phrase you used. That's
the phrase that I use. You can't decolonize it overnight.
And making North America, making the United States stronger doesn't, I don't think, decolonize the sport.
The idea is to set the platform for Brazil and the United States.
The real access. The real way to decolonize the sport, of course, would be to have, a United States of Africa under scientific socialism, where the resources, instead of going to AFRICOM, would go to people's development, and then you could have leagues. That would be the way to decolonize the sport. Now to these other issues, I'm still with you on at least trying. I would be interested to see if your idea about foul calling would be what impact it would have. I'm not mad at that. I've also seen criticisms. I admit I get these from YouTube video essays, but I've also seen criticisms with at least selectively edited evidence that shows, in terms of your example of Neymar, that were he to give up the ball faster, for instance, and stop trying to dribble through the entire team, he might get hacked less. Were he to not himself, add on, that infamous gif of him rolling down the sideline, he does add on, but at the same time, I'm with you. Like, I also get that players are going to hack him. I get that they get frustrated with him. I get over the years when he was doing all the flary stuff in front of their faces, they get upset, and that should be punished. And I'm with you on that. I just don't know that the outcome is what we're all looking for. Now, look, man, Daniel, I think, left, and we are over 3 hours, or we are over 2, or headed to 2.5 hours. But I don't know if we want to leave people wanting more, as they say.
Yeah, we can leave. Is Daniel gone? Like, he's gone?
I have no idea. He said
he said something on WhatsApp that he's having problems with his connection.
I didn't even see the chat. He said, "I'm giving up." Apology. So he is giving up on this.
Well, just so that you guys know and let the audience know, my second book, which is the Football Manifesto, Roman numeral 2, should be coming out hopefully before Christmas, and I will have an entire chapter on rules changes.
Well, I hope that, Robert, I hope that we get, advanced copies, and we get the first interview.
Yeah.
And that when you do go running off to Dave Zirin again, that you shout us out in this time. That's all I'm asking in advance.
I can't believe you said that.
I know. I'm just going to keep messing with you on that. Listen, and shout out to. I'm terrible. And salute to. But I will salute to Dave for, I saw that he just went and visited Mumia Abu Jamal. So Dave,
he did. He did.
So salute to Dave on that. Fellas, anything else you want to leave us with? Again, I'll remind people that the links to all of your extended work is in the show description, as is the case with Daniel, as is the case with the BAP statement and petition that we talked about earlier. Salute to Claudia. Anything else?
Send us Claudia's contact info. How do we get to? How do we get in touch with her?
I'll put you in touch.
Okay.
I
That
will
sounds good,
absolutely
man.
put you all in touch.
I thought she was great, man.
Oh, she's dope. She's dope. And folks around here are familiar with her work, and she's been a strong contributor to BAP for a while as well. So
I know this is probably an off, and it's a delicate question to talk about. Maybe we can talk about it offline. But I'm still not I'm still not sure I understand the relationship between you and BAP.
Me and BAP. I mean, technically, I'm a member. I'm just an insufficiently participant. I'm an insufficiently active member, but I'm a member of the Black Alliance for Peace. I support their work, and I wouldn't want to. I would want to distinguish what my contribution from those who are more active members, like Claudia, and I saw Kai in the chat earlier, and there's probably some others, Obi as well. So. I think probably everybody in the chat is more active in BAP than I am. There's a lot of BAP membership around here.
What's the connection between BAP and the organization that Margaret Kimberly is involved with?
You talking about? Well, as far as I'm aware, she's in BAP.
Okay.
She is also a member of BAP, and she's also with Black Agenda Report. Is that what you're talking about? And the Black is Back
Agenda Report. But those are two separate organizations, right?
I mean, technically, yeah. Well, Black Agenda Report is by now a legendary outlet co-founded initially by Glenn Ford, Bruce Dixon, Margaret Kimberly came along. I was actually there at the very beginning of that formation as well. And then in 2009, I believe, after Obama was elected, Omali Yeshitela of the African Socialist People's, I'm messing that up, African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, and Glenn, and to a lesser extent myself and a few others, became part of what was called the Black is Back Coalition, which was a coalition of different groups and media, which was meant to be an overt condemnation of Obama as a representation of the Black radical tradition. And and then Black Alliance for Peace emerged after Ajamu Baraka's run with the Green Party.
Oh, okay.
So they're separate, but there's a lot of overlap with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, Community Movement Builders. There's even Party for Socialism and Liberation to a certain extent. So there's a lot of Black Agenda Report is not an organization; it's a journalism outlet. And definitely rest in peace, Glenn Ford and Bruce Dixon. And yes, Margaret is a member of who put that in the chat is a member of Black Alliance for Peace as well. So I hope that clears things up a little bit.
Yeah, I thought this was a great session, man. I thought that
I agree. I love these builds. So salute to the both of you. Shout out to Daniel. And to Claudia, to Black Alliance for Peace, to the undefeated chat. Thanks to everybody. And
let me give a shout out to Mutanda for being a foil, because Mutanda is a great foil, man. Appreciate that, bro.
I think you need to go read IFAB, and next time we need to have video evidence that you clip for whatever arguments you want to make, so we can actually have more productive, and it's not just I think, I feel, subjective nostalgia. Because some of the things are just wild, and then we get to a place where
I think you're distorting what I'm saying. But go ahead.
Listen.
Hey man, look. I can't deny what I saw in Maracana.
I know.
I can't deny it.
Nobody can touch you on that.
But
the beauty of what you say there is that nobody can seemingly touch that, right? It's nostalgia. You don't have to back that up with any relative evidence. You don't have to it can just be, this is how I think and feel the game is. And here's the thing, how much game do you watch? You could have just stopped watching it in 1982 and then Boom. Now all of a sudden it's like everything. Like it's wild how you do that.
Oh,
I
man,
wasn't there.
I think you're distorting. You're distorting.
I wasn't there in Maracana. You're right. But guess what?
You're distorting.
Guess what? There's evidence. There's evidence. We don't have to go far. And then when it's put in front of you, you're like, I don't like that. That doesn't work.
So that's why, Robert.
I disagree with that.
But that's why, Robert. I don't. It's not that I disagree with your conclusions.
Distorting,
but Robert, it would be less possible to distort if you tighten up your methodology. So I'm not even judging in this moment your conclusions, but the steps you take to reach them, I think could use some enhancement. That's all.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'll put that in the book for sure.
It's tough to reach a good conclusion though if the premise is flawed. So
let's see.
Mutanda
will not stop.
If the premise,
will never stop.
It pisses me off.
He will never stop.
No, if the premise is the colonizers are rigging the world to their benefit.
No, I agree with that, but that's not the only premise. That's not the only premise. That's the problem. That's the problem with it. No, that's the problem with it. But Derek, this is
I want to leave.
I know. I'm with you.
Hold on, Robert.
I want to leave with one point. I want to leave with one point.
I want to leave with one point, Robert.
I want to leave with one point.
No, before you leave with one point, the 1 point, there's always another point. It's very slick because if I start off with that premise of the colonizers are rigging the world, nobody can argue with that. Nobody in this panel, we're all on this panel because we fundamentally agree with all of that. Politically, we are there. That's the starting point. But then you add this other stuff, and you add your own subjective experience, and then you conflate all that to say, and then this is why, and it's like, what? Hang on a minute.
Mutanda, no one here is any more subjective than you. But I want to conclude with the following. Okay. I want to recommend to your audience, and I know that nobody will read this because, people have their lives to live, but I want to recommend a 2-volume work that is subtitled Capitalism and Schizophrenia. Both books, the first book is Anti-Oedipus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia. The second book is 1,000 Plateaus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia. I just want to make those recommendations to your audience.
This is your recommendations as evidence for your claim that if we add refs. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing, Robert. I was just joking. I couldn't help it.
It's my recommendation to raise consciousness.
Right on. And we appreciate it. All right, everybody. Bro. Peace. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. Thanks, everybody. Catch you next time with more. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.